This is Nora Hewitt-Gervig, hyphenated, and I am a passenger on the Terror Express tonight, and I couldn't be more excited to be here with my buddy Jason Bradford and Orlando.
Hey, it's Dominic from The Dominic Natty Show, and you are watching Terror Express. Here we go, Orlando Rodriguez and Jason Bradford.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Terror Express. Today we are talking to Nora Hewitt-Gervig. You may remember Nora from season 9 of Sci-Fi's Face Off, where she won that season as the head honcho top winner. You also may know Nora as the practical effects key artist from the recently released 13 Fanboy. She is also involved with the Star Wars Mandalorian, and she has some great projects coming up that we'll talk about later in this episode. We are going to have some great surprises and some twists and turns and some little plot twists along the way that Orlando and I have cooked up for you, Nora, and we hope you like it. So with that said, Orlando, let's get this party started.
You won season 9 of Face Off, as Jason had mentioned earlier. So, and it aired on the Sci-Fi channel. I remember very, very well that I saw that season. What was your process of thinking week by week to ensure that at the end you came out on top from your other competitors?
So I felt like I was kind of like the underdog of my season. I had just come out of makeup school. I graduated on Friday, and on Saturday morning, I was on a plane out to California to shoot the show. I was actually, when I got casted on the show, I was actually originally the first alternate. So somebody dropped out of my season, and that's the only reason I got tapped in. So it was like from the beginning, kind of like I'm just lucky to be here. Like I'm fresh out of school. Like I don't really know what the hell I'm doing. I'd made like maybe 3 prosthetics in my whole life, like sculpting and running the foam and this and that. So I wasn't going in with a ton of expectations. So from week to week, I really just tried to listen to the judges' feedback. I tried to, I was an avid watcher of the show. Before I went on the show, I was a huge Face Off fan. So I had watched, the mistakes other artists had made. I had kind of listened to what the judges liked and didn't like throughout other seasons. And I really tried to keep that in mind when I was on the show. And I tried not to go outside of what I knew I was capable of. So I really tried to think about what I was sculpting, think about the makeups that I was going to have to execute. And I tried not to shoot like too far out of like what I knew how to do because I was so new at everything. So I really just tried to make sure that the makeups I was committing to sculpting were something that I was going to be able to handle applying. And then also always keeping in mind feedback that I got from the judges, feedback that I knew other people got from the judges. I just always tried to listen and just not do anything crazy that I wasn't going to be able to do well. Like I just was like, do what you know, do it well, like do paint jobs you know how to do, like don't try any crazy shit because this isn't the place to like fuck around and find out. So that was kind of my strategy going into it, was do what you know, do it as best you can, and really listen to the judges and keep that in mind. So that's kind of how I tried to take, every week by week, but I was just happy to be there every week that I didn't go home. It was just like, all right, I'm still here. Like, let's do this. So
do you think that there's enough inclusive crewing behind the camera going on compared to what there was decades ago? And if not, what would you suggest to the filmmakers who aren't inclusive?
That's a great question. And honestly, like I think queer people have always been like a huge part of film, whether they were acting on one side of the camera or, producing and shooting the movie. I think maybe back in the day, it just wasn't as prevalent for people to be out, right? But I think queer people and the queer community have always been an integral part of Hollywood and the filmmaking process over the years. So it's not even so much that, you go on set and it's every different denomination of person, every skin color, every background. You can imagine you really, it's a huge melting pot on set. Rarely do you go on set and it's just all like the same kind of person, right? And I've worked on sets where there's like tons of other gay people. I've worked on sets where there's like no other gay people. Sorry, my dog's barking. I think like, and it's funny, like when you're putting together a crew to make a movie, you go with like your tribe, right? So like depending on who's directing, on who's producing, they've got these like network of people that they always tap into, right? Like there's like little teams, little tribes in filmmaking, people that will always work together and always hire these people that they've worked with before. And it just goes into like a bigger, networking situation in Hollywood where, you hire the people that are dependable and that you've worked with in the past that you've worked with well. And yeah, so I mean, every tribe is a little different, and there's, tribes of exclusively, gay people making movies. There's a melting pot, and I think yeah, I mean, you always need more gay people doing everything, if you ask me. So, I mean, yes, you can always get more gay people on set behind the screens, but right, come on, more queers all the time. But no, but I think we've always been there. I think we've always been part of film history, and I think we will continue to do that. So,
very good. Yes, I absolutely agree with you 100%. And I happen to know, this is going to be one of our little plot twists here.
Let's hear it.
I happen to know there's somebody else who shares your views and is going to be joining us as a surprise. Somebody that somebody that you think dearly of, and somebody who thinks very dearly of you, as we all do. So I'm going to bring her in right now. I'm not going to tell you her name until she's on here, but she is joining us right now. Vanessa Wright, welcome. You are in our room with Nora.
Hi, gorgeous.
Hello.
So I was just asking.
I was so excited.
I was just asking Nora about the LGBTQ plus community being inclusive behind the camera as far as working on films with the filmmakers.
Yes, let's talk.
Yes. So what are your views on that as far as our family, our community being as integral as any other orientation in filmmaking?
Yeah, I mean, we need more of everybody. I think it's crucial that we start lifting up and raising more marginalized voices. Visibility matters.
Absolutely. Yes.
Absolutely. I was saying to Jason earlier before you came and joined us, which I'm so excited about, that, I think that queer people have always been a huge part of filmmaking. We've always been there. I think back in the day, people just weren't as out as they are now. But I think that we've always been an integral part of Hollywood and filmmaking and the arts in general, but especially, theater and film. I mean, from back in the day, I mean, you had so many people that were like these like infamous famous gays that were just closeted forever and ever because of the time period. So I think we've always been there, and we always will be. It's just now there's a lot more visibility because it's something we are able to talk about openly and honestly, and not have to hide and have beards and this and that. We can just be, and it's great.
I feel like we've made so many strides to change things, to be able to not have to hide as much, which I think is beautiful. But how awful really you have to completely hide who you are, your love of your life, everything, just because it could damage your career. I mean, it was extremely risky and very brave for those who did come out and said, can we cuss? Fuck you to the, you can bleep it.
My next question is, what LGBTQIA plus movies would you say cause an impact on the moviegoer due to the subject matter, regardless of who played a role as a gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans person?
For me, something that comes to mind, that got mainstream attention, got Oscar nominations and stuff like that way back when, was Boys Don't Cry with Hilary Swank. I mean, that was like a huge one, not only portraying, a transgender story way before it was something we were talking about in like the main forum. And also, Hilary Swank playing, taking on that role as a heterosexual woman. She did a fantastic job. And that kind of delves into something that comes up a lot now where, they want people to be playing these roles that are actually identify more closely with the character, same thing with like, people playing correct races and not just, throwing an Italian guy in to play, a Hispanic or whatever, because they did that for so long too. And that's now very frowned upon, right? Like you want accurate representation from your actors as far as, who they're playing in those roles. So yeah, for me, I think that one was big. It definitely got mainstream attention. You know, I can think of a bunch of other queer movies that I grew up watching that were more cult, that only other gay people maybe knew about, or you know, whatever. So yeah, I think Boys Don't Cry was a big one that was out to like the main audience, the mainstream. Monster, big, you know, mainstream again, Oscar nominations. So those movies that tell, you know, a really big historical story about LGBTQ history and stuff like that, that get to wide audiences are super important. And then we're just really lucky that we get all the culty ones to ourselves. So
I have kind of a follow-up to that. So there is a lot of people taking issue with, you know, non-trans actors playing trans roles, or, you know, non-LGBTQ actors playing opposite, and so on and so on. And I understand the need for correct representation, but there's a lot of backlash on actors who did play those roles in the past when things were a little different.
yeah.
And I am of the opinion, and I'm curious where you guys come from, I don't think they necessarily deserve that backlash.
I agree.
You know, I mean, it was the best actor for the job at hand. Like, I think what, you know, Sean Penn, when he played Harvey Milk.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brokeback Mountain.
Yep. No, I couldn't agree more, Vanessa. I do think sometimes you have to be careful with like giving everybody so much shit all the time, like especially in the arts. Like it's interpretive, it's, you know, it's artistic expression. It shouldn't be limited to, oh, only gay people can play gay people, and you know, only, you know, men can play, you know, women. It's like, no, like I think it should be the best actor for the role. I think if you can get a fantastic trans actor to play a trans character, even fucking better.
Yeah.
And you know, now I think, especially now in today's visibility and how things are, like I think you can find that, right? So it's almost like people have to make really calculated decisions, especially casting directors, about who they do choose, because that backlash is real and people do get pissed about it, you know. But
and I think a lot of that boils down to creating the opportunities and actually seeking out those performers.
Vanessa, you said something a little earlier on too. I think that kind of hit another nail right on the head. Representation. What do you all feel about character representation in front of the camera, as far as, you know, how we're deliberately meant to be perceived in the eyes of the viewer from the filmmaker?
First of all, I think people were just historically uptight for a really long time. But yeah, I think this is the thing. I think a lot of it has kind of always been there, just behind this kind of veil. I mean, especially if you talk about horror, you know, they're all like, oh, you know, we need more queer horror. But the truth is, like, horror has kind of been pretty queer since the dawn of time.
yeah.
You know, people are going to see what they want to see. But I think as far as storytelling goes, yeah, we need to see more diverse stories by more diverse storytellers. You know, I think it's crucial when you're watching a film to be able to relate to somebody who's like you. And, you know, if everybody is white and straight,
they're not tasting the rainbow. It's gonna be,
no, man, you gotta taste the rainbow. It's good.
It has some flavor. According to some bullshit website I looked up, it said that like lesbian representation is like an all-time high, which upon further thought about it afterwards, I was like, yeah, I guess so. Like there is a lot of like more lesbian content than there used to be. Because I think even back in the day, I mean, you know, like Queer as Folk was like the first like kind of big, fully encompassed like gay, you know, like television show. I think it was HBO or Showtime or something. So it wasn't like to everybody. But even like up until recently, I still feel like a lot of the content is geared towards like gay men and stuff. But there has been a lot more like lesbian representation and bisexual representation, which has been really cool. You know, with like the Fear Street trilogy, we're getting like lesbian protagonists. I loved that. That felt cool and identifiable to me. And then there's the First Kill show that just came out on Netflix. the CGI is terrible, the writing leaves something to be desired, but I'm totally here for the smutty girl on girl action, because yeah, that's great, and we don't get enough of that.
There's so much more that defines a character in a story than their sexuality, and I think that's when you know you've got a good character. What is on your bucket list, Nora, as far as like effects and stuff that you've not necessarily been able to attempt for a film yet, that you really would love to be like, I need to do this?
Through these amazing fan films and through the indie circuit, I'm getting to work on these movies that I could only dream of getting to work on, getting to be part of these franchises that I grew up loving and obsessing over. So I mean, getting to work with, you know, Vinny DeSante on the Never Hike series was a dream come true, and you know, I'm going to continue to work with him. I've already done my breakdown. We've already talked about all the effects we're going to do for Never Hike Alone 2. Very excited. We're going to shoot that in the spring. I can't wait. Tons of fun, crazy shit. People have these amazing ideas, and I'm just lucky enough to get to like materialize them and make them real. And if it wasn't for creative people like Vinny and yourself, Vanessa, I would not get to make the cool shit that I get to make.
Tell us about a real life supernatural experience that you've had.
Actually, the house that we all stayed in on Face Off was like notoriously like, this shit's haunted. Like past seasons, everybody stayed there. Like this had been the Face Off house for like seasons and seasons and seasons. And it was an old historic house in Burbank, and had like the little historic plaque marker and a big like fence and gate that went all the way around it, very secluded, but in the middle of like a very busy, like you go out like a couple blocks and you're at like Nigel's and you're on like the main like strip in Burbank, but it felt very secluded. Anyway, so it's this old ass fucking house, tons of face offers had stayed there, and the PAs who were with us constantly when we weren't shooting, and were just kind of like our babysitters basically, would tell us like, oh yeah, like, you know, people have, you know, heard footsteps upstairs when everyone's downstairs, you know, people have heard like disembodied voices, like, you know, kind of telling us, you know, what other people had experienced in the house. So I was in a big communal room with all the girls. So there was like 2 smaller bedrooms that had like a couple bunk beds, and then there was like a big communal room with a ton of bunk beds where all the girls stayed. And they all got up really early to do their makeup and shit, and I was in charge of the alarm clock. So I set the alarm every night, and I didn't have to get up and do my fucking makeup at 4 a.m, but some of them had to get up at 4 a.m to do their makeup, because it was wheels up at 6. We'd be out of the house by 6. So we get up at 4 a.m. I wake everybody up, they're doing their morning thing. I would go down with the old man crew, and we'd like have our coffee and make our eggs and shit. And I'm standing in the kitchen, in like the doorway of the kitchen, and there's like a few, like Ben and Scotty are in front of me, they're cooking their breakfast. I'm standing in the doorway with a cup of coffee, and I hear someone behind me say my name, like clear as day, like someone was like, Nora. And I like turn around, and there's nobody downstairs, none of the PAs are downstairs, everybody's upstairs. So I definitely had like I heard somebody say my name, like they were right behind me, like standing right behind me. And there was just nobody there, nobody even downstairs except for me, Ben, and Scott, because everyone else was still getting ready upstairs. So that was like a cool first time, like disembodied ghosty shit. And that happened to me twice in that house while I was there.
Wow.
So that was cool.
I feel like I had a paranormal experience where Nora was the ghost. The first time I met her.
It was so
Elaborate.
So I'm not necessarily afraid of the dark. I'm just afraid of everything in general. Everything scares me. I startle very easily, like always. So it was a late night, but I think everybody was shooting that late night. And it was the first night Nora got into town, and I got back to the crew house, and there was a car I didn't recognize. And I was like, oh God, somebody's in there. And I don't know what they're like. I was like, what if they're going to mess with, I don't know. So I come like creeping in, like, hello. And she comes busting out of the basement. She's like, hey, I'm Nora. Would you like a drink? And I'm like, ah.
I did scare the shit out of you. That was so fucking funny.
It was the best. And then, you know, we had some beverages and chit chatted, and it was great.
That is it, Nora. Thank you for joining us on this episode of
Thank you for having me.
Terror Express. It's been great seeing you again. I love your face. I love everything about you. You're a wonderful, beautiful, extremely talented person. And
right?
yeah,
I just
can't
like
wait to see more
want to pick
from
her
you.
up and carry her around in like a baby Bjorn.
Thank you guys so much. I'm so happy I got to come hang out on your terror train. It was a great ride. I'm bummed we're almost rolling up to the station here, but yeah, I loved it. Thank you guys so much.
And thanks for letting me crash the party.
I'm so glad you crashed.